The massive ship hung in space above Earth like a dark moon. It was bigger than anything humans had ever built. Its surface was smooth and black, with strange lights that pulsed in patterns no human could understand. Inside the United Nations building in New York, world leaders sat around a table and stared at the being before them. Ambassador Zexthal looked like a walking crystal. His body was made of clear blue stone that sparkled when he moved. Light seemed to flow through him like water. When he spoke, his voice came from everywhere at once, filling the room with sounds that felt cold and sharp. "Your species is young," Zexthal said. His words were perfect English, but they felt wrong somehow. "You have just learned to travel between stars. You fight among yourselves. You waste your planet's resources. This cannot continue." The Secretary General of the United Nations, Maria Santos, tried to keep her voice steady. "What do you want from us?" "We want nothing from you," the crystal being replied. "We offer you something. Peace. Order. A place in the great community of civilized worlds." Around the table, presidents and prime ministers shifted in their seats. Through the windows, they could see the alien ship blocking out the sun. Smaller ships moved around it like insects. "The Galactic Hegemony Council has brought order to 12 species across 1,000 worlds," Zexthal continued. "We have ended wars. We have stopped suffering. We have created a perfect system where all beings live in harmony under our guidance." "And if we refuse?" asked President Chen of the Asian Federation. The crystal creature tilted his head. Light danced through his body in new patterns. "Refusal is not logical. Young species always resist at first. They think they know better. They always learn they are wrong." "That sounds like a threat," said Prime Minister Johnson from Europa. "It is not a threat. It is simply truth." Zexthal raised one arm. The air above the table shimmered, and suddenly they could see space. Ships filled the darkness. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Each one was larger than Earth's entire space fleet. "This is a small portion of our forces," the ambassador explained. "We have ships that can crack planets like eggs. We have weapons that can turn suns into ice. We have technologies your people cannot imagine." The human leaders stared at the display. Some of them had been soldiers. They knew what overwhelming force looked like. This was beyond overwhelming. This was impossible to fight. "But we do not wish to use these weapons," Zexthal said. The image disappeared. "Violence is wasteful. It damages useful resources. It creates unnecessary suffering." "What exactly are you offering us?" Santos asked. "Simple. You will dissolve your primitive governments. You will end your military forces. You will accept guidance from hegemony administrators. In return, we will give you technology, clean energy, medicine that can cure any disease, food that can feed every person on your planet. And if we say no?" The crystal being was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, but somehow more frightening. "Then we will demonstrate why resistance is futile. We will destroy one of your cities. If you still refuse, we will destroy 10 cities. If you continue to resist, we will destroy your civilization and start again with the survivors. You would kill billions of people? We would remove obstacles to progress. But it will not come to that. No species has ever required more than 3 demonstrations. Most surrender after the first." President Okafor of the African Union leaned forward. "How many worlds have you conquered this way?" "Conquered is the wrong word. We have liberated 417 civilizations from the chaos of primitive self-rule. All of them now enjoy perfect peace and prosperity." "Conquered? Where are they now?" "These liberated species? They serve the greater good. Some work in manufacturing, others in agriculture. The most intelligent become administrators under our guidance. All are content." Santos felt a chill run down her spine. "They're slaves. They are free from the burden of making harmful choices." Zexthal corrected. "They are free from war, crime, poverty, and suffering. Is this not what all beings desire? And you rule over them?" "We guide them," The Hegemony Council knows what is best for all species. We have maintained perfect order for 3,000 of your years. The Secretary General looked around the table at her fellow leaders. She saw fear in their eyes, but also something else. Anger. How long do we have to decide? She asked. 1 rotation of your world around its star. 1 year, as you measure time. That's not very long for such a big decision. The crystal being made a sound that might have been laughter. It is more time than we usually provide. Most species require only days to see reason. We are being generous because your species shows some potential. What kind of potential? You are violent and chaotic, but you are also adaptable. You might make useful workers once properly guided. President Volkov of the Northern Territories stood up slowly. And if we need more time? There is no more time. 1 year is already more than generous. Use it wisely. Zexthul began to fade like mist. His voice came from the air itself now. Do not make the mistake of thinking you can fight us. Do not waste your time building weapons. Do not try to run. We have ships watching every part of your space. In 1 year, you will give us your answer. Choose carefully. The crystal being disappeared completely. Through the windows, the great ship began to move away from Earth. But everyone in the room knew it was still there. Somewhere in the darkness, waiting. Santos stood up and walked to the window. The sky looked normal now, but she could feel the weight of those watching ships pressing down on her world. 1 year, she said quietly. What do we do? Asked President Chen. Santos turned back to the table. Her face was pale but determined. We survive, she said. Whatever it takes. None of them knew that this conversation was being recorded by devices they couldn't detect. None of them knew that similar meetings were happening on every world the hegemony had ever conquered. And none of them could imagine what their species would become in the next 12 months. The crystal beings had made one crucial mistake. They thought humans were like every other species they had encountered. They were wrong. The message went out 12 hours after the crystal alien left Earth. It traveled through every secure communication channel on the planet. Military networks, government systems, corporate databases, and even private networks all carried the same simple words. Code survival. Everything else stops. Unity now. For the first time in human history, every gun fell silent. Every border opened. Every flag was lowered. General Harrison sat in what used to be the Pentagon War Room. Now it was simply called the Coordination Center. Representatives from every nation on Earth filled the enormous space. Chinese generals sat next to American admirals. Russian scientists worked alongside European engineers. African leaders shared tables with Antarctic researchers. Status report, Harrison said. Dr. Sarah Kim, formerly of South Korea's space program, stood up. Project Dandelion is ahead of schedule. We have 300 colony ships under construction. Each one can carry 50,000 people and supplies for 10 years. Construction sites? Hidden in asteroid fields, behind moons, in deep space. The aliens seem to be watching our major shipyards, but they're missing the small ones. Colonel Martinez from Mexico raised his hand. Sir, the aliens keep asking why we're not building warships. Their spy drones show up whenever we move military equipment. Harrison smiled grimly. Let them wonder. What about the underground cities? Not ahead of schedule, replied Dr. Petrov, a former Russian mining engineer. We're using every tunnel system on Earth. Old subway networks, mining shafts, natural caves. We've connected them all. The main cities can house 50 million people each, and they can't detect them? The aliens scan for heat, electricity, and radio signals. Dr. Petrov explained. Our systems run on geothermal power and fiber optic cables. To them, we just look like empty rock. Around the room, people nodded. This was the kind of planning humans were good at. Not building bigger weapons, but finding ways to survive when everything went wrong. What about the agricultural projects? Harrison asked. Dr. Yuki Tanaka from Japan's farming ministry stood up. We're building hydroponic farms in every underground facility. We've also created seed banks with genetic samples from every food crop on Earth. If the surface gets destroyed, we can rebuild. And the manufacturing? That's the interesting part, said Dr. Ahmed Hassan, from Egypt's tech sector. We're not building big factories. We're building small ones. Thousands of them. Each underground city has its own production facilities. They can make everything from clothes to computers. Harrison looked pleased. The aliens expect us to centralize, to build big targets they can destroy. Instead, we're spreading out. There's something else, Doctor, Kim said quietly. Our diplomatic team has been traveling through alien space. They say they're studying their culture, but really, they're looking for weaknesses. What kind of weaknesses? Ambassador Lu Wei, who had spent 6 months visiting alien worlds, stepped forward. The hegemony is powerful, but it's also fragile. They've been in control for so long that they've forgotten how to handle real problems. Explain. Their ships are amazing, but they all depend on a central command system. Their economy works perfectly, but only because every species does exactly what they're told. Their society is stable, but only because no one questions authority. Dr. Emma Thompson, a former British intelligence officer, added more. We've been studying their psychology. These species have been conquered for so long that they've forgotten how to think for themselves. They follow orders without question. And that's a weakness? It's the weakness, Thompson replied. They can't adapt. When something unexpected happens, they wait for orders from above. But if the command structure gets confused, Harrison understood, the whole system breaks down. Exactly, and humans are very good at creating confusion. Around the room, people began to smile. Not happy smiles, but the dangerous smiles of predators planning a hunt. What about the technology research? Harrison asked. Dr. Rajesh Patel from India's Science Ministry pulled up a holographic display. We've been reverse engineering alien technology from their diplomatic visits. Their computers are incredibly advanced, but they're not protected against human creativity. Meaning, they've never had to deal with hackers. Their society is too ordered. No one has ever tried to break into their systems just to see if they could. But humans would. Humans have been doing it since we invented computers, Dr. Patel grinned. We've already figured out how to access their communications network. We can't control it yet, but we can listen to everything. General Harrison felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Hope. What are they saying about us? That's the best part, Doctor, Patel replied. They're confused. They keep talking about how strange we are. Other species either surrender immediately or fight back with everything they have. We're not doing either. They expected us to build a fleet and attack them, added Colonel Martinez. When we didn't, they thought we would just give up. But we're not doing that either. Reezer. 2-4. 2-4. Arrest. 2-4. 2-4. 2-4. So they're waiting to see what we do next? Yes. And that's giving us time to prepare. Dr. Kim stood up again. There's something else. Our people who are living among the aliens are sending back interesting reports, such as, the aliens have been conquering species for thousands of years, but they've never had to deal with guerrilla warfare. They don't understand the concept of irregular combat. They expect armies to face armies, Dr. Thompson explained. They expect governments to negotiate with governments. They've never dealt with a species that just disappears. Harrison leaned back in his chair. Around him, the greatest minds from every nation on Earth continued their reports. Food production that could survive in space. Manufacturing systems that could work anywhere. Communication networks that could function without central control. Transportation that could move people and supplies across vast distances. They weren't building an army. They were building something much more dangerous. A civilization that could exist anywhere, survive anything, and adapt to any situation. How much longer do we have? Harrison asked. 8 months, Dr. Kim replied. Will we be ready? For what they expect? Yes. For what we're actually going to do? She smiled. They have no idea what's coming. High above Earth, alien ships watched and waited. Their sensors detected the movements of humans, the construction projects, the resource gathering. Everything seemed normal for a primitive species trying to prepare for conquest. The aliens had conquered 417 worlds. They had seen every possible response to their ultimatum. They knew exactly what to expect. They were wrong. The year was over. Ambassador Zex Thul materialized in the United Nations building exactly as he had before. But this time, the building was empty. The crystal being walked through silent hallways. His footsteps echoed off bare walls. The meeting room where he had delivered his ultimatum was completely vacant. Dust covered the table. The windows were dark. Curious, Zex Thul said to himself. He activated his communication device. Command ship. This is Ambassador Zex Thul. The human leaders are not here. The voice that answered was mechanical and cold. Perhaps they are hiding. Check the underground areas. Zex Thul sent his scanning beam deep into the earth beneath the building. The tunnels that had once bustled with activity were empty. He found old equipment, abandoned supplies, but no humans. The underground facilities appear to be vacant as well. Expand the search to the entire planet. For the next 6 hours, hegemony ships swept across Earth's surface. Their sensors penetrated every structure, every cave, every hidden space they could find. They discovered elaborate underground cities that could have housed millions of people. They found hydroponic farms and manufacturing facilities and massive storage areas, all empty. This is impossible, Admiral Korth said from the command ship. His species looked like giant insects with silver shells. Entire civilizations do not simply vanish. Perhaps they fled to their colonies, suggested Captain Vree, a slug-like creature whose species specialized in tracking prey across space. Check all their known settlements. The hegemony fleet split up and traveled to every human colony in space. Mars was empty. The moon bases were abandoned. The mining stations in the asteroid belt showed no signs of life. Sir, reported Lieutenant Kix from one of the scout ships, I'm finding something strange on Mars. Define strange. There are holographic projectors everywhere. They're making the colony look active from a distance. But when you get close, there's nobody here. Admiral Korth felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Confusion. Begin deep space scans. Find their ships. But the deep space scans revealed nothing. No large fleets hiding behind planets. No massive vessels carrying refugees to distant stars. The humans had simply vanished. This violates all established patterns, Admiral Korth told the Hegemony Council through subspace communication. Species do not disappear. They fight, or they surrender. The voice of Supreme Counselor Thane filled the command ship. Thane was ancient. Even by hegemony standards, his species had been the first to join the council, back when it was just 3 civilizations working together. Perhaps they committed mass suicide rather than face conquest, Thane suggested. Some primitive species choose extinction over submission. We would have found bodies. We would have detected the energy signatures of mass destruction. There is no evidence of planetary suicide. Then where are they? Unknown. The word hung in space like a curse. The hegemony had not encountered an unknown in over 1,000 years. Continue searching. They must be somewhere. But weeks passed, and the humans remained unfound. The hegemony deployed their most advanced tracking technology. They sent spy drones to every corner of human space. They analyzed communication records and trade routes and shipping manifests. Nothing. Then the reports began to arrive from across hegemony space. Sir, Captain Vree said nervously, we're receiving strange communications from Sector 7. What kind of communications? Trade ships are reporting delays. Nothing serious. Just small problems. Navigation equipment malfunctioning. Cargo manifests getting mixed up. Communication arrays experiencing interference. Admiral Korth dismissed the report. Minor technical issues. What does this have to do with the humans? The problem started right after the humans disappeared. Coincidence. But more reports came in. Supply ships were getting lost. Manufacturing facilities were having equipment failures. Communication networks were developing mysterious glitches that caused messages to arrive corrupted or delayed. "Sir," Lieutenant Cheek said quietly, "some of the trade crews are reporting seeing ships that don't match any known designs." "Unknown ships?" "Small vessels, very fast. They appear on sensors for a few seconds and then disappear. When pursuit ships investigate, they find nothing." Admiral Korth stared at the tactical display showing hegemony space. Red dots marked areas where strange incidents had been reported. There were hundreds of them, scattered across dozens of star systems. "Patch me through to Supreme Counselor Thane." "Admiral," Thane's voice was as calm as always, "have you located the humans?" "No, sir, but I believe they have located us." "Explain." "The technical problems across our space are too widespread and too coordinated to be coincidental. I think the humans are out there, and they're doing something to our infrastructure. That is impossible. We are monitoring all of our systems. Any large-scale sabotage would be immediately detected. What if it's not large-scale? What if it's thousands of small actions that look like random failures?" There was silence on the communication channel for a long moment. "You are suggesting that a primitive species has somehow infiltrated our territory and is conducting a stealth campaign against us?" "I'm suggesting that we may have underestimated them." "Admiral, humans had barely achieved faster than light travel. Their weapons were primitive kinetic projectiles. Their society was fractured and chaotic. They possessed no technology that could threaten us. Then where are they?" Again, that terrible silence. "Find them," Thane ordered. "Deploy every available ship. Search every system. I want those humans found and brought to heel." But as the months passed, the situation only got worse. The mysterious technical failures spread to more sectors. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for centuries began experiencing constant delays. Communication networks became unreliable. Even worse, some hegemony officials reported having strange dreams about rebellion and freedom and the idea that conquest wasn't inevitable. Captain Vree approached Admiral Korth with the latest reports. "Sir, we've received a message." "From whom?" "We don't know." It appeared on every communication screen in the fleet simultaneously. The technicians can't figure out how it was transmitted. "What did it say?" Captain Vree's voice was barely above a whisper. "It said, 'We are not hiding. We are learning.'" Admiral Korth stared out at the empty space where Earth floated peacefully in its orbit. The planet looked exactly the same as it had a year ago. Cities still glowed at night. Weather patterns moved across the continents. Everything appeared normal, but he knew that something fundamental had changed. For the first time in 3,000 years, the hegemony faced an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't fight, and couldn't understand. The humans were out there, somewhere, doing something that was slowly unraveling the most powerful civilization the galaxy had ever known. And the worst part was that the hegemony had no idea how to stop them. 6 months after Earth went silent, the crystalline Vorthan Empire made a shocking discovery. Their most trusted trade partners, the metallic beings known as the Nexari, had been cheating them for decades. High Administrator Zekthara stood in her crystal tower on the Vorthan homeworld, staring at documents that couldn't possibly exist. Mining contracts showing that the Nexari had been taking twice the agreed amount of precious metals. Communication records proving that they had been selling Vorthan technology to unauthorized species. Financial data revealing billions of credits stolen from Vorthan accounts. "How did we obtain this information?" she asked her assistant. "It arrived through our secure communication network," replied Sub-Administrator Korthvel. "The files appear to be authentic Nexari records." "That's impossible. Our networks are completely separate from theirs." "Yes, Administrator. Yet here we are." Zekthara examined the documents more carefully. Everything was perfect. Digital signatures, encryption codes, timestamps. These were definitely real Nexari files. "Contact the Nexari Empire immediately. I want explanations." But when the Vorthan Empire confronted their trade partners, something unexpected happened. The Nexari claimed the documents were fake. They accused the Vorthans of fabricating evidence to break their trade agreements. Within hours, the argument had escalated into a complete breakdown of diplomatic relations. The same day, similar discoveries were happening across hegemony space. On the insectoid homeworld of Clax, Queen Vithara received evidence that their ancient enemies, the Mollusk Republic, had been developing biological weapons designed specifically to target Claxi genetics. The documents showed detailed research into Claxi DNA and plans for airborne toxins that would be harmless to other species but deadly to insects. The Mollusk Republic denied everything. They claimed the research files were planted evidence. They accused the Claxi of planning to use the fake documents as an excuse to restart their old territorial wars. Meanwhile, in the Nexari Empire, Emperor Kronthak discovered that his most trusted advisors had been in secret communication with rebel groups on Nexari colony worlds. The messages discussed plans to overthrow the imperial government and establish independent planetary governments. The advisors swore the communications were false. But the rebels, when questioned, confirmed that they had indeed been in contact with imperial officials. They had recordings, meeting transcripts, and promises of military support. Supreme Counselor Thane called an emergency session of the Hegemony Council. Representatives from all 12 species gathered in the great chamber that orbited the galactic core. The chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate the different environmental needs of each species. Crystalline beings stood in pools of liquid energy. Gas-based life forms floated in contained atmosphere bubbles. Solid species sat on platforms adjusted to their gravity requirements. "We are facing an unprecedented crisis," Thane announced. His voice echoed through the chamber, automatically translated into each species' native language. "Someone is deliberately trying to destabilize our alliance." "The evidence is clear," declared Queen Vithara, her insect voice clicking with anger. "The Mollusk Republic has been planning genocide against my people." "Lies," bubbled Emperor Squidthok of the mollusks. "Your so-called evidence is obvious fabrication designed to justify aggression. The Vorthan Empire has been stealing our resources for decades," accused Emperor Kronthak. "We have proof of their criminal activities." "Impossible," rang the crystal voice of High Administrator Zekthara. "Your accusations are based on forged documents." Around the chamber, accusations flew back and forth. Ancient grievances that had been buried for centuries suddenly exploded into the open. Trade disputes that had seemed minor became major political crises. Territorial agreements that had stood for thousands of years were suddenly questioned. Thane tried to restore order, but the chaos only grew worse. Then Admiral Korth, who had been investigating the human disappearance, requested permission to speak. "Supreme Counselor, I believe I know what is happening." "Explain." "The humans are doing this." The chamber fell silent. Then several representatives began laughing. The idea was ridiculous. Humans were primitive. They had vanished 6 months ago. How could they be responsible for sophisticated intelligence operations across the galaxy? "Admiral," Thane said patiently, "the humans possessed no such capabilities. They were barely able to travel between stars. With respect, sir, we keep saying that. But we also can't find them. And all of these problems started right after they disappeared. You're suggesting that humans somehow infiltrated our most secure facilities and stole classified information from multiple species? I'm suggesting we don't know what humans are capable of." Emperor Kronthak's metallic voice clanged with contempt. "One primitive species cannot destabilize an empire that has lasted 3 millennia. "Then explain how these documents appeared," Admiral Korth challenged. "Explain how perfect copies of classified files from multiple governments all surfaced at the same time. Explain how communication networks that have never been breached suddenly have security failures across dozens of star systems." The chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives whispered among themselves in their various languages. The accusations and counter-accusations continued. But now, there was something else in the air. Fear. "Even if humans were somehow responsible for these intelligence breaches," Thane said slowly, "they could not have known about ancient conflicts between our species. Some of these disputes date back thousands of years before humans developed space travel." Admiral Korth paused. He had been thinking about this for weeks. "Sir, what if they learned about these conflicts by studying us? Our diplomatic missions spent months traveling through human space before they disappeared. What if the humans weren't just hiding? What if they were watching us, Learning about us. Learning what? How we think, how we operate, how we maintain control. The chamber grew quiet again. The implications were terrifying. You're suggesting, Thane said carefully, that humans studied our civilization and identified deliberate weaknesses to exploit. I'm suggesting that humans might be very good at finding problems that already exist. High Administrator Zekthara's crystal body flickered with nervous light. But how could they access our secure files? How did they disappear an entire species without leaving a trace? Admiral Korth replied. How are they operating ships we can't track? How are they infiltrating our communication networks? We keep asking how they can do these things, but maybe we should be asking why we didn't think they could. Around the chamber, the greatest minds of galactic civilization struggled with a concept they had never encountered. An enemy that didn't fight with weapons, but with information. A species that didn't conquer territory, but conquered trust. Queen Vithera spoke into the silence. If humans are responsible for this, what do they want? Maybe, Admiral Korth said quietly, they want us to destroy ourselves. The chamber erupted in chaos again. But this time, it wasn't anger driving the arguments. It was fear. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Hegemony Council faced the possibility that their perfect system might not be perfect at all. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, humans watched and listened and prepared for the next phase of their plan. The Hegemony Council hadn't met in emergency session for over 2 centuries. Now they were meeting for the 3rd time in a month. Supreme Counselor Thane looked around the chamber at representatives who no longer trusted each other. Trade agreements were failing. Ancient alliances were crumbling. 3 member species had already threatened to leave the hegemony entirely. We must contact the humans, he announced. The chamber buzzed with nervous conversation. Emperor Kronthak was the first to speak. Contact them how? We still don't know where they are. Then we broadcast a message on all frequencies. Tell them we want to negotiate. Queen Vithara clicked her mandibles nervously. Negotiate what? They haven't made any demands. They haven't even admitted they exist anymore. They're dismantling our civilization piece by piece, Thane replied. What more of a demand do you need? Admiral Korth stepped forward. Supreme Counselor, there's something else. My intelligence teams have been investigating the security breaches more carefully. What did you find? The humans didn't just steal our classified documents. They've been inside our systems for months. Maybe longer. The chamber fell silent. Explain. Our communication networks, trade databases, even our meeting records. Everything has been compromised. But not damaged. Not destroyed. Just accessed. You mean they've been listening to us? I mean they've been learning from us. Every conversation. Every decision. Every secret we thought was secure. They've had access to all of it. High Administrator Zekthara's crystal body flickered with alarm. How is that possible? Our security systems are the most advanced in the galaxy. That's what we kept telling ourselves, Admiral Korth said grimly. But our security was designed to stop other hegemony species from spying on each other. It was never designed to stop something completely different. Different how? Humans don't think like us. They don't follow our patterns. Our security systems couldn't recognize them as a threat because they weren't acting like any threat we'd ever seen. Thane considered this. Send the broadcast. All frequencies. Tell the humans we want to talk. The message went out across the galaxy. To the human species. The Hegemony Council requests communication. We are prepared to discuss terms. The response came within hours. But it didn't come through space communications. It came from inside the council chamber itself. Sub-Administrator Korthvel, who had been Admiral Korth's assistant for over 10 years, stood up and spoke in perfect human English. We have been talking all along. The chamber erupted. Security forces rushed toward the figure that had been Korthvel. But he raised his hands peacefully. There's no need for violence, and there's no point in capturing me. I'm not the only one. As he spoke, his appearance began to change. His crystalline features softened. His blue skin took on a more pinkish tone. Within moments, a human being stood where a Vorthan administrator had been. My name is Captain Sarah Chen, formerly of Earth's Diplomatic Corps. I've been your assistant for 8 months, Admiral Korth. Admiral Korth stared at the human in shock. That's impossible. You've been through full medical scans, genetic testing, security clearance investigations. Your medical scans look for known alien physiology. Your genetic tests are based on cataloged species. Your security investigations check for criminal records that we don't have. Sarah smiled. You were looking for threats, you understood. We're something new. How many of you are there? Thane demanded. Does it matter? We're here now. Let's talk. Around the chamber, representatives looked at their own assistants and advisors with new suspicion. How many of their trusted staff members were actually humans in disguise? What do you want? Thane asked. That's the wrong question, Sarah replied. The right question is, what do you want? We want order restored. We want the attacks on our civilization to stop. What attacks? We haven't fired a single weapon. We haven't invaded any planets. We haven't destroyed any property. You've stolen classified documents. You've infiltrated our governments. You've turned our species against each other. Sarah shook her head. We've revealed information that was already true. We've pointed out corruption that already existed. We've exposed conflicts that were already there, just hidden. You've destroyed our alliance. We've shown you that your alliance was built on lies and threats instead of trust and cooperation. Emperor Kronthak's voice clanged with anger. You have no right to judge our system. We have maintained peace for 3,000 years. Peace for who? Sarah asked. Your member species, or the hundreds of civilizations you've conquered and enslaved. We brought order to chaos. We ended wars. We created prosperity. You created a prison, a beautiful, efficient prison, but still a prison. Thane leaned forward. What do you propose instead? Nothing. Nothing? We don't want to rule you. We don't want to conquer you. We don't want to replace your system with our system. Then what do you want? We want you to leave us alone. The simplicity of the statement shocked the chamber into silence. That's all? Queen Vidhara asked. That's everything, Sarah replied. We want the right to exist as we choose. We want the right to make our own decisions, even if you think those decisions are wrong. We want the right to refuse your help. And if we refuse to grant you these rights? Sarah looked around the chamber at the fractured alliance, the suspicious faces, the crumbling trust. Then you can try to force us. But you've seen what happens when you try to control something that doesn't want to be controlled. You would continue to destabilize our civilization? Your civilization is destabilizing itself. We just removed the lies that were holding it together. Thane was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was tired. What guarantee do we have that humans won't become a threat to galactic order in the future? The same guarantee we have that you won't threaten us. Sarah replied. None. That's what freedom means. The right to make choices, including bad ones. You're asking us to accept uncertainty. We're asking you to accept reality. Control is an illusion. Order imposed by force always eventually breaks down. The question is, whether you want to learn to live with uncertainty, or whether you want to keep fighting it until it destroys you. Around the chamber, representatives whispered among themselves. The choice was unprecedented. For 3,000 years, the hegemony had imposed order through strength. Now they were being asked to try something that had never been tested on a galactic scale. Cooperation instead of control, trust instead of fear, choice instead of submission. The Hegemony Council will consider your proposal, Thane announced. Sarah nodded. We'll be here when you decide. We've always been here. She began to walk toward the exit, then paused. One more thing. The reason this frightened you so much isn't because we're dangerous. It's because we proved that everything you thought was impossible actually isn't. And if humans can disappear, if humans can infiltrate your systems, if humans can choose chaos over order and survive. She looked directly at the representatives of the conquered species. Then so can anyone else. The chamber was still silent long after she left. For the first time in 3 millennia, the Hegemony Council faced a choice they had never offered anyone else. Freedom, with all its uncertainty and risk. or the slow collapse of an empire that had forgotten how to adapt to change. The age of inevitable conquest was over. What came next would be up to everyone to decide.